Hey awesome fans, me Megashark, and today I meant reactants, my brain. Reacting to SCP Shadow of Lamps from Dr. Bob, okay. Let's get to it, and don't forget to subscribe to me, I would appreciate.
Kevin always thought he had the makings of a photographer, so when he saw the lamps at the garage sale, how could he resist? These weren't the kind of lamps you found on your bedside table. These were professional studio-grade photographer's lamps. They would take his photography to the next level, or so he thought. For the low price of $200, Kevin loaded the lamps into the back of his car and drove home. It seemed like a morning well spent. He never would have imagined that because of this decision, within 6 months, he'd be dead.
Yeah.
Kevin had always been on the shyer side, socially anxious, awkward, you might even say lonely. He just didn't know how to talk to people, but maybe photography would be a way in. If he could only learn how to take beautiful pictures, he'd be an asset to somebody. Anybody. These thoughts were on his mind as he returned home and began setting up the lamps in his basement.
Oh boy.
He plugged them in and flicked the switch. An impressive glare cut through the gloom of his basement. A mess of strange shapes and shadow were projected against the bare brick wall. Perhaps he needed to clean the bulbs, he thought. That's what you get for saving money and buying secondhand. But it was a start, at least. As much as the strange shapes of the shadows enraptured him, he knew that some professional lights alone wouldn't turn his basement into a photography studio. The next day, he bought a white canvas and placed it in front of his wall. It was the perfect backdrop for taking much more professional photos. But when he stepped back to take a proper look, he almost had a heart attack. The silhouette of a woman seemed to be cast against the canvas.
Oh, brother.
She was in a strained pose that seemed designed to show off her shadowy curves. Was it some trick of the light, or was he going crazy? Kevin stepped back again to try to get a better look, but no. As sure as he was about anything in the world, he was sure that that was the shadow of a woman. Maybe it was still some result of camera positioning. He tried to move the lamps around, but the woman remained, still holding that exact same alluring pose. At the time, it felt like the only solution was to leave the basement and simply avoid trying to accept all the things this implied about his new reality. But the next day, when curiosity got the better of him, he walked back down the basement stairs and saw her there. That silhouette, that shadow projected against the canvas, that beautiful impossibility. And strangely, around her, he didn't feel so awkward. He didn't feel so alone. No part of him wanted to turn off the lamps, to make her disappear. The thought seemed insane to him. Instead, every morning he'd come downstairs into the basement and spend a few hours with the shadow. He'd talk to her, share his frustrations, his secrets. It didn't even strike him as odd until a month was nearly up. Then, things began to change. He was astonished to find that during his otherwise immutably consistent morning schedule, the shadow had begun to move.
Yeah.
She twisted and contorted into strange poses, as though she was in the middle of a photo shoot. Was she posing for him, inviting him to capture her? He took shot after shot as she posed for hours on end. It was exhilarating, but he still had no concept of just how much was to come. Because in the days that followed her first strange, stilted movements, she developed a full range of motion, acting out strange scenarios like a shadowy one-woman show. She seemed to speak to people who weren't there, walk around, partake in activities with invisible objects. Kevin was fascinated, entranced. It was like his own personal soap opera playing out in his basement, watching this shadow woman live out her solitary shadow life. He couldn't help but see himself and his own struggles to connect, reflected back from her. He knew it sounded sad, maybe even delusional, but it was almost like he knew her better than he knew anyone else, even though they'd never spoken or truly interacted. As the months marched on, he felt even closer to her, so invested in her strange, impossible life, playing out entirely on the canvas in his basement. He was even astonished to see she pulled out a camera now and then, taking photos of her own. It was like the two of them were meant to be together, soulmates, separated by a rogue layer of reality. Everything changed one morning when he entered the basement and saw that his dear shadow woman wasn't alone. There was another figure with her, huge and masculine, with large horns protruding from his head. The figure made him uneasy, but the shadow woman didn't seem to share his fear. They seemed to talk and laugh and dance and walk hand in hand together. Kevin couldn't help but feel a little betrayed. But this had all become such a huge part of his life now. He couldn't go back. He couldn't just stop watching. Though maybe if he did, he would have survived.
Yeah.
In the weeks that followed, he saw things sour in the murk of his basement. Other shadow men appeared, with their horns and their long fingers. They were all over the shadow woman with their grasping, busy hands. It made Kevin sick. One day he realized that this was so much more sinister than he'd ever imagined. The morning that Kevin died, when he entered the basement, he saw the horned shadow men attacking the shadow woman he'd grown so close to. Surrounding her, their long, jagged shapes struck at the woman. She couldn't stop them. The sight of it made Kevin's head spin. He staggered back toward the stairs, one hand gripping the railing. But before he could run out of the basement, he saw the heads of the horned men all turn toward him.
No.
It was the first time anything in the shadows had directly acknowledged him, and now they couldn't get their eyes off him. Kevin had no close friends, and he wasn't close to his neighbors either. That's why, as the horned men descended upon him, dragging him back down the basement stairs, their claws sinking into his skin, no one heard him scream. No one was ever going to help. What's the most you ever lost at a garage sale? If you happen to get a real steal of a deal on a couple of photography lamps, then you might just lose your sanity and then your life. Such is the way of SCP-205, also known as the Shadow Lamps. In a colloquial sense, these lamps appear to be haunted, bearing the indelible psychic impression of the months leading up to an unfortunate woman's gruesome death. In order to keep the world safe from some of this anomaly's most deleterious effects, we need to understand as best we can how it works. We also need to discover how the Foundation might hope to contain it, and what exactly happened to the woman whose shadow is forced to act out her terrible demise again and again and again. The two lamps, referred to in the official files as SCP-205-1 and SCP-205-2, are completely identical, even down to their serial numbers. When both are turned on and power is supplied, the two lamps project an anomalous light capable of passing through any object except a large, plain white surface, like a photographer's screen or even a simple white wall.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, the image is invariably the same: the shadowed silhouette of a woman, often making provocative poses. This highly detailed shadow puppet will then proceed to enter a 6-month cycle, representing the aforementioned last 6 months of a presumably real woman's life. And these cycles always end in a particularly gruesome fashion at the end of April and October. The static image of the shadow woman in a provocative pose only remains that way for the first month, perhaps representing a pose that the flesh and blood equivalent truly struck during her likely career as a model while alive. During the last week of that first month, the shadow woman will begin to move slightly, looking as though she's uncomfortably shifting her weight from foot to foot, a nervous tic. As the first calendar month ends, the shadow woman will spend 8 hours executing a series of poses, as though acting out an invisible photo shoot, before being unlocked from her stasis and spending the next 5 months moving constantly. It will appear almost like the world's most committed mime performance. The shadow goes about the daily life of the woman, who appeared to have been both a model and a photographer. Most objects she interacts with won't also appear in the shadow, but a few of the most important ones, such as her camera, seem to be the exception. From what we can extrapolate from her mimed behavior, it seems that the woman had a thriving social life, full of relatively superficial relationships, hiding a deep well of loneliness underneath. In the first 5 months, she has only one intimate interaction, a striking example of just how disconnected from everyone else this woman truly was. And it was exactly this kind of loneliness and vulnerability that seemed to make her the target. During April and October, new figures begin to enter the fray for the first time. These are the horned figures, with their almost comically exaggerated male physiques. There's always just one at first, interacting cordially with the woman at what might be a party or other public social event. Nothing about the woman's body language seems to indicate she's nervous around this figure, implying that perhaps she can't see everything that we see.
Yeah.
Then begins a relationship between the horned shadow and the woman, as he seems to court her, taking her on dates, wining and dining her, and engaging in, well, let's just say more intimate encounters.
Yeah.
While I have your undivided attention, if you want to take your understanding of the anomalous to the next level, I highly recommend that you check out the Dr. Bob Patreon. For a small sum, you not only support my continued investigations here on this channel, but you can also access exclusive material like thumbnail concept sketches and uncensored versions of the episodes that we can't show here on YouTube. And given some of the truly dark places that this anomaly goes, you're going to want to sign up and find out the extremely YouTube-unfriendly truth. At some point, the horned figure will introduce the woman to others of its kind, where, once again, she won't show any sign of distress. These others will hang around the two of them at all times from this time onwards, up until the point where, invariably, she takes a photo of the horned figures with her Polaroid camera. Sometime after this, the Shadow Woman will develop the photo. At this point, the moment she looks at the photograph, she will seem to exclaim in horror and attempt to run away, shutting herself away behind a locked door. What follows is nothing short of an abject nightmare. The horned men will return and relentlessly torment the Shadow Woman for the last week of April or October. Even after their attacks appear to have killed her, they continue attacking without pause, showing no shame, guilt, or remorse. And if anyone enters the vicinity during this savage and terrifying period, they're likely to be the next target.
Yep.
This will always lead to a savage and painful death for the intruder, as well as the Shadow Woman, as the horned shadow men descend upon them with relentless, insatiable violence.
Oh boy.
On the last day of the cycle, before everything renews, the shadows of the horned men will grow larger, as though they're getting closer to the light source. They will eventually choke out the light of SCP-205 in darkness, causing the lamps to fail, no matter what procedures have been put in place to keep them working. This is the most dangerous time of all to be in the presence of SCP-205 when the power of the shadows is truly absolute. But if you're still there at this point, I'm afraid it's probably already too late.
Yep.
Given the clear danger presented by this anomaly, and the fact it's frankly just plain frightening and disturbing, Foundation personnel have taken the utmost caution in devising containment methods. 205 has been given the containment class Euclid, and for now, they're both being kept in Chamber 52 of Site 23, where they're supplied power and allowed to play out their grim tale on the stark white wall for anyone in the adjoining test chamber to see. Maintenance staff are kept close to hand, along with a series of replacement parts such as transformers or bulbs if either of the lamps break or begin to malfunction. Though in the closing stages of the process, taking place in April and October every year, all maintenance is suspended, along with permission for any research staff or guards to enter the chamber. If the chamber goes fully dark at any point during this process, nobody is allowed to enter, and anyone who somehow does is to be considered lost.
Yep, that'd be
The chamber must be left in total darkness for at least 30 days before any security personnel are permitted to enter, purely as a safety precaution. Because the test chamber being in a state of total darkness is considered the absolute apex of danger that this anomaly poses, when maintenance is being performed, it's critical that only one of the lamps is ever turned off at a time. If both are ever accidentally turned off, the same procedure applies. No one is permitted to enter the chamber for 30 days. Because of the possible danger that SCP-205 presents to Foundation staff, the research into its nature and abilities will only continue pending a review from the O5 Council. Once permission is granted to cease the investigations, the power from the lamps will be cut off. After that 30-day waiting period, they will be taken and put into permanent storage, never to be turned on again. At a point, the potential risks go beyond what we have to gain. The extent of the risk became clear during what is now known as Incident 205-76B, when one of the bulbs in the lamps blew out during late October. A junior researcher opened the door to Chamber 52, hoping to enter and switch the bulb while the horned men were attacking the eternally doomed Shadow Woman. However, the second the door opened, it was like something in the atmosphere changed. They stopped, and all of the horned shadow figures seemed to look up and turn their faceless gazes towards the researcher. He felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the pure malice in their collective intent had wafted across the room like a bad smell. Wisely, before any of the shadows could move, and believe me when I say they can move a lot faster than you think, He shot back out of the room and slammed the door behind him.
Oh my
At first,
gosh.
his superiors accused him of insubordination for refusing to go back inside, before seeing the staring, horned figures through the observation window. They just waited there and stared for 3 whole hours, perhaps hoping that someone would step back inside. They seemingly got bored and returned to attacking the female shadow. After this, there were several other incidents of technical failures in the later stages of the 205 cycles. I've got a strong suspicion that after that first incident, it represents a concerted effort from the horned figures to lure Foundation staff inside. We still don't really know who exactly these entities are, and exploring deeper to find out would risk putting others in danger of death. All we can extrapolate from the tragic tale of a woman whose name we will never know is that, at first, they can seem human, perhaps even charming. But as time passes, you'll begin to see them for who or what they really are, until a glance at a photograph reveals that everything you know is wrong. But by then, it's always already too late, isn't it? To support my continued mission here at Dr. Bob, be sure to give the video a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you haven't, and let me know what other anomalies you'd like me to cover down in the comments. In the meantime, for more horrors, check out SCP-747, Children and Dolls.
I might check that out. But what I was gonna say, before we move on to this one, I was gonna say, I think they were demons and they shapeshift themselves to look like humans. But when she took a photo, she saw the real of the demon of them. That's why they have demon horns when you see them, the shadows of them. That's what I think. What your some fans think, let me know down the comments below. So now let's go check this out. SCP 747, Children and Dolls.
The young man watches as the lily-white coffin is lowered into the ground. He's surprised at the dryness of his eyes, seeing as it's his own mother being buried. But now isn't the time for questions. When the dirt is piled on and the small service comes to an end, the young man is the last to leave. Other than the eulogy, he never says a single word to anyone. She'd been difficult towards the end. He'd cared for his mother until her disease had made it so that she wasn't really his mother anymore. And then for another 2 years after that, things had been said and done that he wished he could remove from his memories of her. But the past is forever set. As he looks up from his mother's gravestone, he notices something strange in the distance, perhaps 30 feet away from him. A little girl, maybe about 10 years old, in a school uniform, standing behind another gravestone. She's wearing a worn-looking plastic pig mask and carrying a dirty rag doll. The young man stares into the dark eye holes of her mask for a moment, wondering if he's really seeing this or if she's a figment of his imagination brought on by stress and grief. Then he blinks and she's gone. For a second, he feels a frightening sentence looping through the dark recesses of his mind. You're starting to lose it already. A few years ahead of schedule. You'd make your mother proud. The young man shakes his head and leaves for home. Of course, he might see things on a day like this. The mind does funny things when it's in a state of extreme emotional distress. It was perfectly natural that he'd see strange things on a day like this. But that little girl in the pig mask really did look real. Arriving home is a surreal experience. It's the first time in a long time that he's truly felt alone, like a child lost in a vast and unfamiliar space. Something about it just felt wrong. He makes himself a microwave meal and eats it silently in the kitchen. The place is so quiet, no panicked yells or cries of pain. He sighs and looks out the kitchen window as he washes the dishes, and in the distance, he sees another strange sight. A young boy, 12 years old or so, standing out in the cold, dark woods next to his house. He's wearing only swimming trunks and a worn-looking plastic mouse mask. A rag doll hangs limply from his thin, pale arm, just like the one the girl in the graveyard was holding. The young man's first instinct is to go out and help the child. After all, it's a cold night. He could catch his death out there. But with another blink, the child is gone. Just trees in the dark. He breathes a ragged sigh and takes an aspirin. Something must really be wrong with him if he keeps seeing strange children with animal faces out there.
Nothing wrong with you.
He trudges upstairs, hoping that maybe he'll get some sleep tonight and feel a little better in the morning.
It's the SCP.
Shadows dart in the corners of his eyes, but he pays them no mind. He can't trust anything he sees today. He pauses for a moment in front of the room where his mother used to sleep. It looks cavernous without her tiny form nestled in the bed. He thinks about how she'd last been in that same room a little more than a week earlier. He sighs, turns off the light, and goes to bed. That night, the young man has strange dreams. He feels like a tiny fish at the deepest, darkest point of the ocean, watching huge black shapes loom and shift around him. He's afraid. He feels like he's being watched. The sudden spike of terror jolts him out of his sleep, and that's when he sees them. The children in the animal masks. 7 of them now. They stand around his bed, hand in hand, like they're playing some kind of game, but in dead silence. Each one has a rag doll sitting patiently at their feet. Logically, he should be more afraid upon seeing them. It's the strangest experience of his life. And yet, he feels an odd sense of empty calm settle over him, like a warm blanket.
Oh, no.
His eyes close, and sleep takes him again. When the young man wakes up the next morning, something doesn't feel right. He's already dismissed the strange children with the animal masks and the dolls as a figment of his imagination, a half-waking dream. But what he can't dismiss is the numbness in his fingers and toes. It's like he'd spent all night sleeping in the cold outside, despite his room being perfectly warm. Perhaps he's coming down with something. Other strange things start to happen over the next few days. He makes himself a sandwich, and as he bites into it, he notices he can't taste a thing. Come to think of it, he really can't smell that much either. Could this be a cold, the flu, something worse? Also, he just can't shake the feeling that he isn't alone in the house. It's as if he can feel a presence there with him. And not just one presence, but multiple. Could it have something to do with those strange dreams and hallucinations, the children in the masks?
They're not
He suppresses
dreams,
the thoughts, not wanting to consider their implication. He can scarcely dare to ponder what's worse, that there really are strange little children in masks creeping around his home, making him sick, or that he's losing his mind, just like his mother. He puts it out of his mind, but every so often, when he happens to glance out of the window, he can't help but see little shapes moving in the distance. When he watches the TV or tries to listen to music to distract himself, he notices that he needs to turn up the volume more than he ever did before. His hearing is getting worse. Could this be some kind of sinus thing? It's the only rational explanation, but it can be hard to apply a rational explanation when what's happening is inherently irrational. Several days later, after getting out of bed in the morning and standing in front of the bathroom mirror, the young man notices something is different. It's his skin. It's a pale, almost creamy color now, like all the life and vitality has been leached out of it. But it's not just that. He looks closer at his face in the mirror. His eyes. Have they always looked like that? Were they always that shade of dark, murky brown? Maybe it's his addled mind, but he can swear something is different, like the ground is shifting underneath his feet. That's when he notices something in the corner of the mirror, a little boy with dark blue overalls and a grinning cat mask. He just stands there, watching. The young man turns, hoping to finally see one of these strange children up close, but of course, there's nothing there. Over the following days, it all gets worse. 2 weeks since the funeral, and his senses of taste and smell haven't returned. His hearing gets worse by the day, until he's almost entirely deaf. The sightings of the children don't stop, but they're harder to make out. Over time, his vision starts to blur, and no matter how hard he rubs his eyes, they never clear. He stubs his toe, cracking the toenail open from tip to base, and he doesn't even notice. Little by little, feeling itself is starting to leave him. He doesn't even notice until the day he decides to chop some carrots for a soup he's making, hoping in vain that this one might be the meal he can finally taste. But his vision is getting so blurry now, he can barely... The knife cuts into his palm. It takes him a second to even register, because there's no pain and no blood. He stares at the clean wound in his palm with detached fascination, trying to work out the shapes in front of him, to make sense of it all. What are those thin white strands sticking out of the cut? He grabs the edge of the skin, though it doesn't look much like skin now, more like pale, ragged fabric, and he peels it back. No blood, no sinew, no flesh, just puffy white stuffing underneath. He's in bed, and has been for a few days now. He can't taste, smell, hear, feel, or even see. All he can do is think in the dark, He's confused and afraid. He wants his mother, but she's long gone. On the outside, he's shrinking away, drawing into himself. He can't move or talk as he gets smaller and smaller. They walk in through the walls, the children in masks, ready to receive their new toy. The young man is nothing more. All that's left is another rag doll with a pair of brown button eyes laying on the bed. A little boy in a rabbit mask steps forward and picks it up. He stares at it for a moment before the children leave, and the house is empty once more. This is the kind of unpleasant, anomalous experience you can expect from a close encounter with SCP-747, aptly nicknamed Children and Dolls. SCP-747 specifically refers to the phenomenon of these strange, anomalous children wearing animal masks. Studies have shown that, masks aside, all of these children are identical to children who have proven to have died around the time that their anomalous counterparts first manifested. This leads us to the working theory that the SCP-747 instances are spectral manifestations of the children they once were, twisted somehow by the unifying force of SCP-747. This is a theory supported by several pieces of unsettling information. Agents from the SCP Foundation disguised as grief counselors conducted interviews with the bereaved parents of each of the deceased children, and through these heart-wrenching interviews, they were able to discover that each of the children who died had possessed a doll that they loved very dearly. So much so that the dolls were each buried with them, because on some level, the thought of separating them from this last comfort of the mortal world was too painful for the parents to bear. Given the preoccupation with dolls exhibited by SCP-747 instances, the Foundation found these facts to be highly illuminating. The physicality of SCP-747 instances, or rather, the lack thereof, also points towards the theory of them being powerful spectral manifestations. They are able to phase through solid surfaces of up to 10 centimeters in thickness, and can sometimes have difficulty in holding solid objects due to their partially solid nature. They live mysterious and lonely lives on a plane of reality adjacent to our own, and they have never been seen to speak, though it's likely that they do have some form of communication with one another. Outside of individuals they're directly targeting, the SCP-747 children show little interest in other non-anomalous humans. They mainly seem to occupy themselves with their dolls and with each other. It is unknown to what extent the children are truly sentient, but they do appear to have some form of self-comprehension, manifesting in an awareness of the space they take up and their surroundings, which keeps them from bumping into things as they walk. But of course, their spectrality is hardly the most unsettling or eye-catching feature of SCP-747. No, the real danger of SCP-747 is the fact that they're able to turn human beings into dolls, a process which takes a matter of seconds to instill, but 21 torturous days to finally take effect. In order to begin this process, the children will select a human that intrigues them, perhaps one that would fit in nicely with their collection. The Foundation isn't currently aware whether there are any fixed criteria for victim selection, or if it's just a matter of wrong place at the wrong time. When the time is right and their selection is secure, they'll lock hands and form a ring around the human in question for 5 to 7 seconds. This is all it takes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds. And you're already at the point of no return. After completing this brief ritual, the children will go their separate ways, and the process will begin to take hold. This is why it's so imperative for the SCP Foundation to keep a lid on SCP-747's activities. While there's no cure for the process once the ritual is done, it is possible to prevent the ritual from being completed in the first place by escaping the circle and leaving the SCP-747 children. However, they have cognitohazardous measures against this, with many victims reporting a sense of blankness or thoughtlessness while within the circle. They induce a placid state of mind to prevent resistance from the horrible fate they're bestowing. The transformation doesn't incur any immediate symptoms. However, after 15 minutes or so, the victim will begin to experience numbness in the extremities, much like the kind caused by cold weather or poor blood circulation. Symptoms will gradually worsen over the next 21 days, though if the victim enters a state of chronic stress or anxiety, this process could potentially shorten to as little as 10 days. The conversion can often be neatly divided into 3 distinct stages. Stage 1. Loss of minor senses. The most frightening aspect of this initial stage of transformation is the fact that many of its symptoms could easily be written off as that of more common minor ailments. The senses of smell, taste, and hearing will begin to dampen and then disappear entirely, in what may at first seem like a severe cold. The victim may express a sense of distress at their condition at this stage, but will remain largely mentally stable. Any deviations from that expectation into more extreme mental instability should be taken as a sign of an accelerated transformation rate. However, towards the end of stage 1, a more pronounced change will start to take hold. The victim will notice a slow shift of their eye color and skin tone to reflect the colors of the doll, though this is only the beginning. Stage 2, loss of major senses. Over the next 13 days, the victims will begin to lose their senses of sight and touch, resulting in extreme mental instability and stress. The victims may attempt to perform gruesome experiments on themselves, trying to rediscover feelings in their body, only to become more unstable upon realizing that these senses are gone for good. At this stage, the frightening, anomalous physical changes will become even more pronounced. The skin of the victim will take on a rough, ragged quality as it transforms from normal skin into a variety of fabrics. The internal organs are also slowly transformed into a patchwork of synthetic stuffings, and even the victim's eyes will start to harden into buttons. However, the victim will remain alive throughout this entire grim process, even as their autonomy over their own body rapidly fades away. Stage 3. Full transformation. Within 24 hours of entering Stage 3, the victim is fully and irreparably turned into a doll. The SCP-747 children will treat this doll just like they treat any others, and if ever a doll created by the influence of SCP-747 is destroyed, they will show greater interest in humans once again, until a new target for conversion is selected. The SCP Foundation currently has 7 SCP-747 specimens in containment. SCP-747-01 is an approximately 7-year-old male wearing a set of blue pajamas and a zebra mask. SCP-747-02 is an approximately 12-year-old male wearing swimming trunks and a mouse mask. SCP-747-03 is an approximately 10-year-old female wearing a uniform typical of an expensive private school and a pig mask. SCP-747-04 is an approximately 14-year-old male wearing a winter coat and a rabbit mask. SCP-747-05 is an approximately 12-year-old female wearing a striped sari and a giraffe mask. SCP-747-06 is an approximately 5-year-old girl with a bright pink dress typical of a beauty pageant contestant and a goat mask. And finally, SCP-747-07 is an approximately 9-year-old male wearing blue overalls and a cat mask. Interestingly, he was also found with a physical note containing a short story about a mother searching for her child in the afterlife. Interestingly, the mother of this particular entity, before becoming an SCP-747 instance, is believed to have died in childbirth. All of the SCP-747 instances that the Foundation has in containment are kept in a single containment chamber, 30 meters by 10 meters in size, with concrete walls at least 15 centimeters thick to prevent the children from phasing through them. It is mandatory that any unusual behaviors by the children are reported to a superior immediately. If the children seem to take an interest in any members of the staff that research, guard, or attend to them, that member of personnel must be transferred to a different project immediately. The children are allowed a total of 25 dolls to keep them placated, excluding ones created by their anomalous influence, and the SCP Foundation only permits their dolls to be temporarily removed from the containment chamber for examination and repair. Any staff members who begin to show the previously described symptoms of anomalous SCP-747 influence are to be quarantined and contained separately. Task Force 747-B8 remains on call in the event of a containment breach to handle tracking, capture, and containment. Due to the incredibly volatile and dangerous nature of interfacing with SCP-747, Level 3 staff and above are only able to come into contact with them if the situation absolutely demands it. SCP-747 has been given the containment object class Euclid due to their phasing abilities and unpredictable nature. After all, who could ever really know what's going on behind those masks? But there's one more detail about SCP-747 that is perhaps the most frightening of all.
What is it?
There is evidence that suggests that the victims who have been turned into SCP-747 dolls may not actually be dead.
Oh my
In fact, they may still remain conscious, cut off from all their senses, slowly descending further into madness. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-4666, the Yule Man, for more eerie anomalous dolls that used to be a lot more active.
Man, that's crazy. Really crazy. Okay. Which one? Okay, I'll do this one. Dr. Bob's journey through the back rooms.
We weren't entirely sure how we got there. My anomalous research team and I were responding to unrelated reports in the area when, without warning, we found ourselves falling through the floor into what, on the surface, looked like some kind of hotel or office hallway. This was especially strange considering that our equipment didn't pick up any anomalous readings before the event. At first, there was no obvious way back out, but we assumed that if we were to stack the team on each other's shoulders to reach the ceiling, we might be able to clip back through in the spot we initially entered from. But before trying to leave, we thought we could make an attempt to study this location. It was clearly anomalous in nature, and it would be advantageous to us and the Foundation as a whole to gather as much information as we could. The network of hallways we were in seemed to go on forever, and the whole place was decorated the same way. Yellow wallpaper, cream carpet, and segmented white ceilings with buzzing fluorescent lamps embedded into them. The hum of so many lights was overwhelming. Problem surely made worse by the complete lack of any other sound. The carpeting meant that our footsteps didn't even make much noise as we explored.
No, it'd be squishy.
Despite being devoid of any life, the space felt distinctly man-made, but in a way that didn't feel specific to any time or place. The effect was
not man-made,
eerie, to say the least. All of us on the research team, regardless of age or nationality, expressed an uneasy feeling that we'd been there before. It was like the environmental equivalent of a mannequin with a blank face. It was so bland and featureless that I suppose it could be compared to anything. The place where we'd found ourselves was not entirely unknown to Foundation staff, though the anomaly was so elusive that it hadn't been very thoroughly documented. It was known as the Back Rooms, a strange maze of infinite, seemingly man-made environments that resemble surreal, empty versions of locations from our world. The part that we were currently wandering is usually thought of as level 0. Surviving accounts of the back rooms all begin at this point, with the only real way out being to go deeper. So deeper we went. Many times we turned a corner only to find a dead end. Without any landmarks, we found it very easy to get lost. Thankfully, researcher David eventually came up with the idea to use stickers to mark places we'd already seen. He had a pack of labels usually used for specimen bags and took the time to write "cleared" on a number of them, which he stuck up onto the wall every time we turned a corner. It was like a trail of breadcrumbs, only more permanent. Now we had a way of telling where we'd already been and where we hadn't. This continued for what felt like it could have been hours, but also could have only been a few minutes. As soon as we'd fallen into this strange place, we all found that our watches stopped working. It was like being in a frozen moment in time. I'm not too proud to admit that the eerie calm, the lack of any sounds or decoration of any kind, anything at all to break up the monotony of our surroundings, started to get to me. In the few places the fluorescence didn't shine, in the shadows cast by walls and concrete pillars, I would think I saw movement. Though it startled me, I rationalized it to myself as the product of pareidolia, a tendency of the human mind to make shapes out of nothing when deprived of new stimuli. I similarly rationalized away the distant sounds I occasionally heard. That is, until I looked over to researcher Janice and saw that she had turned her head as well. Whatever was making the noise off in the distance, she heard it too. I'm struggling now to even remember what sound it was that I heard. It could have been voices, but it was too muffled and distant to be completely sure. I told researcher Janice that if this labyrinth was truly man-made, there could be pipes behind the walls, which would account for the occasional noise.
This is all
she nodded and agreed with me, but I'm sure now that nobody in the group really bought that explanation. Something, human or otherwise, had built this place.
Not a
and I
human.
think on some level every member of the team was thinking the same thing. I don't want to run into whoever that happens to be. After what might have been miles of walking, taking pictures, and even taking samples of the carpet and wallpaper material. We reached a section of the maze where the lights started to thin out. The shadows grew darker, more frequent. At the end of this long, dark section of hallway, I saw something light up, and I almost started towards it until it moved, and I realized what I was looking at was in fact a pair of glowing eyes with a glowing smile underneath.
Oh no.
I quickly backed away.
Back away.
I was starting to get a strong sense we should turn back and return to this area later with better gear and perhaps something to defend ourselves with. My sense would be proven right later, and this wouldn't be the last run-in I would have with the creature that other travelers have called the Smiler. David marked the area as cleared with a sticker, and we turned in the other direction. Despite what we expected, we were able to find a whole new stretch of hallway that we hadn't explored yet. Now, walking down this path, we passed strange architectural anomalies like a perfectly square hole in the wall with a metal ladder leading up to it. "Do you think someone's down here with us?" Researcher Janice asked. "It's hard to say," I told her. "We'll come back and investigate this tunnel later." David marked the spot with a sticker and took a picture for future reference. Further down the hallway, I discovered a gap in the wall. It was about 5 inches wide, not wide enough to walk through, but wide enough that I could look through and get a good look at the section of the maze on the other side. Squinting, I could just make out the shape of one of David's specimen stickers on the wall, but out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw something else. A hand, maybe, but it moved too quick for me to tell.
No.
This felt too clear to be the same as the moving shadows I thought I had seen earlier in our expedition, but
a person.
I couldn't be sure it was real either. Perhaps if it had made a noise when it moved, I could have been more inclined to think it was real.
It's a mini.
The silence of this place, excluding the ever-present hum of the lights, made it all feel so unreal. Eventually, we came to another, darker section of the maze, and with nowhere to go, we headed forwards. Unlike the other dark section we found, though, it wasn't quite pitch black. There were still 2 fluorescents on the ceiling, but they were a cooler tone than the rest of the maze. In the dim light, the wallpaper seemed to turn from yellow to gray to an eerie blue. This was definitely a welcome rest for our eyes after miles and miles of bright yellow. We were ill-prepared to make camp, but we had some rations that we could share. Everyone was exhausted by this point, so we decided this was as good a time as any to take a rest. We slept in shifts, snacking on granola bars and taking sips from our standard field researcher water bottles. "The Foundation will send someone to look for us," Researcher David said, framing it as a statement even though I could tell from his tone that he was asking a question. "What happens if we can't find our way back?" "There must be an exit somewhere," I reassured him. "At least you still have plenty of stickers to mark our way." David shook his head and showed me the roll of stickers. I could see that there wouldn't be too many left until he ran out. At some point after I dozed off, we were all woken by an unearthly noise. It sounded like metal scraping together, mixed with the cry of a wild animal. We all jumped to our feet, looking for the source of the noise. Then, out of the darkness, a figure came lurching towards us. It was an impossible shape, almost like a 2-dimensional image that had come to life. Its limbs were long and black. This must have been one of the things I'd seen moving in the shadows earlier. Its head looked like a formless scribble, like a child's drawing of a storm cloud. It lacked eyes or a mouth, though, meaning whatever I had seen in the dark hallway was something else entirely. We ran out of the room, struggling to follow the path David had left with his stickers as the entity chased us. All the while it kept making that terrible, deafening sound, which at times almost sounded like a heavily distorted human voice. Not all of us were able to escape it, unfortunately. Researcher Janice tripped in her panic and fell behind the rest of the group, allowing the entity to catch up to her. I don't entirely understand what happened to her. 1 second she was there, and then she was gone. I later found out that while we were still trapped in the back rooms, Her body was discovered by the Foundation back in what you might call the front rooms, that is, our world. She was found miles away from the point where we'd entered and appeared to have fallen hundreds of feet from thin air. But of course, we didn't know any of that at the time. The team and I were all shocked and horrified that she could suddenly just vanish. But if we were to take any comfort in this loss, it was that once it had taken a victim, the entity loped back into the darkness, and we were finally able to stop running. However, I'm also an optimist by nature, so I can tell you the bright side of the disappearance and later death of researcher Janice. I've got a place in my party for a new researcher to help us on our next excursion. Your best chance of being selected is joining the Dr. Bob Patreon today, where you can become a junior researcher and decide what I investigate next, in addition to enjoying behind-the-scenes material and uncensored videos that only my patrons can see. By now, our priority was to make it out by any means necessary. There were 5 of us left, and we wouldn't survive long with our current supplies. Eventually, we came back to the place where all of us had fallen through the ceiling. David volunteered to stand on my shoulders and try to reach the entrance into the backroom's anomaly, but it was no use. His hands only found the plaster drop ceiling panels. When those were pushed up, there was nothing behind them. It seemed the entrance into this place was well and truly one way. With the benefit of hindsight, I can tell you how it's possible to phase or no-clip into the back rooms. I'm sharing this information with the intention of preventing anyone else from making the same mistakes I did. But of course, if you want to enter the back rooms of your own free will, there's really nothing I can do to stop you. I can only advise that you bring a weapon with you when you go. Points where it's possible to no-clip into the back rooms are called, within the small community that has sprung up around this anomaly, terminals. These are not literal terminals, but places where reality isn't quite as it should be. This can be walls or patches of floor that seem to be the wrong color, or objects that cast no shadow even when they should. Doors in impossible places are also a common entry point to the back rooms. These terminals can be unpredictable, however. And while sometimes it's possible to no-clip by accident, it can take several attempts to do so intentionally. Once you have no-clipped, you'll usually find yourself in level 0, as we did. But on rare instances, people have started on level 1, or even level 2. You might now be wondering who exactly created the back rooms. Is it one of the monstrous entities we've encountered in level 0? That's certainly one possibility, but it's impossible to prove. Some more religiously inclined explorers have interpreted it as the work of a creator god, with many people comparing it to biblical descriptions of limbo or purgatory. Other people have taken it as proof of the theory that our entire reality is a simulation. In this interpretation, the backrooms are a kind of developer space for the creators of the simulation to test elements before adding them to the program.
The backrooms.
But how do you get from level 0 to level 1 and beyond? At this point in our journey, the research team and I were about to find out. I can't quite recall when I noticed it, but a subtle change came over the environment at some point in the journey. I felt like my senses had dulled, almost like I was on the verge of falling asleep. I also noticed instead of the plain wallpaper, there was now a manila pattern that looked almost Victorian in style. I was reminded of a short story I'd read a long time ago called The Yellow Wallpaper, but where in that story the wallpaper drives the main character to madness with its unpredictability, this manila pattern was comfortingly regular. This is the appropriately named Manila Room, which is reported by many travelers through the back rooms and is usually thought of as a place to rest and recover. It's also an exit from level 0 to level 1, as we found when researcher Diane tried to take a sample of the wallpaper. She touched it and went straight through the wall as if nothing was there. Before the rest of our party followed suit, David pulled me aside and gave me a worrying message. We were all out of stickers. Wherever we went from here, if it was as uniform as level 0, there would be no way to mark our path. But as we soon found out, walking in circles was going to be the least of our worries. That, though, is going to have to be a story for another day. If you have any advice for surviving future levels of the back rooms, let me know down in the comments. My future might just depend on it.
Whoops, nope, go away, go away, go away.
This might be taken out of context.
Oh, go away! That'll be it for now, awesome fans. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe and comment down below. Have a nice day, fans. Bye.